Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we'll be talking about malaria in Africa. A lot of attention has been shifted from malaria to emerging diseases such as HIV and Ebola. But malaria still remains Africa's biggest killer. What is malaria? Malaria is a disease of the blood. It is caused when an infected female mosquito bites a human being. Globally, 3.4 million people live in malaria endemic area. That is about 106 countries. The World Health Organization estimates that in 2012, 207 million people were infected by malaria. And out of these 207 million, 627,000 people died. An estimated 91% of deaths in 2010 came from Africa region, where a child dies of malaria in every 60 seconds. Global distribution of malaria. As you can see on the map, the green region show where there is no malaria. The red region show where there is malaria endemic areas. And the blue is where malaria has been controlled. Malaria in America. Malaria was eliminated in America in 1950. Approximately 1,500 to 2,000 cases are reported in the United States every year, almost all in recent travelers. Reported malaria cases reached a 40-year high in 2011. What are the symptoms of this disease? Shaking chills that are severe to moderate, high fever, profuse sweating, headaches, vomiting, diarrhea, and anemia. How is this disease being transmitted? Malaria is transmitted from one human to another through the bite of an infected female Anopheles mosquito. When an infected female Anopheles bites a human being, it injects the forms of malaria called the sporozoite. These sporozoites are being carried through the human blood system into the liver cells where they lodge. When they lodge in the liver cell, they infect the liver cells, initiating what is called the endoerythrocytic cycle. When they are in the liver, they mature and form what is called merozoite. This merozoite ruptures, and when they rupture, three things happen to this merozoite. The first thing is the human defense mechanism, recognizing the merozoite as something foreign to the system, secrete what called the white blood cells. That is our defense mechanism. They come out to fight this merozoite. They may kill this merozoite, and the merozoite may also kill the white blood cell. And that is when this go forth and forth, you have like a high fever which is up and down in the body. The second thing is this merozoite infect your red blood cells because they feed on our red blood cells. And the third thing is some of this merozoite transform into the male and the female gamete known as the gametocyte. I was trying to explain to you the life cycle, how the malaria goes in the body. So this is why I brought this slide to reinforce what I'm saying. This is the life cycle takes place in the human host and the mosquito, the vector. So what happens is when this mosquito bites a human being, if this mosquito is infected with this parasite, it introduces the forms of the parasite called the sporozoites into the human. Within 5 to 10 minutes, these sporozoites gain their entrance into the liver with the help of the blood circulation. In the liver, they mature, producing merozoite. When this merozoite ruptures, three things happen to this merozoite. The first thing is our body defense mechanism secrete white blood cells to fight this Merozoite because they consider it as something foreign in the body. The second thing is this Merozoite infect red blood cells. This is our red blood cells. And the third thing is some of this Merozoite transform into the male and the female gamete, also known as the gametocyte. So that when a mosquito bites a person at this stage, the person becomes infectious. So that when the mosquito bites a person, it picks up this male and the female gamete, and another cycle continues in the mosquito where this gametocyte meet and form a zygote. This zygote matures into an orchid matures into an oocyte. This oocyte now migrate into the mosquito salivary glands producing sporozoite, and these sporozoites are the infective forms of the malaria. When this mosquito bites a person, it introduces this sporozoite and the life cycle continues. How is this disease being diagnosed? There are three basic ways which this disease can be diagnosed. We have the microscopic diagnosis, which they use a thick and a thin blood film. What happens is, this is a thick and a thin blood film. They use a drop of blood, they put it on a glass slide, and it's been spread thinly on this slide, and they use special stain. An example of a stain that they use in doing a malaria stain is called Giemsa. When this stain is when this slide is stained, it is being viewed under the microscope. With the antigenic diagnosis, also known as the rapid diagnostic test, this is a very simple test. What happens is these are commercially sold kits. They buy this kit, and what you need is just a drop of blood from a patient. You can do a finger prick or can use a peripheral blood. You drop it into this pot. It migrates along this cassette. Normally this portion is usually clear. When this blood migrates, if the person has malaria, you see a visible reaction here, because what is happening here is this cassette has they have impregnated antibodies that looks like the malaria parasite, so that when they get your blood and the blood has the malaria parasite, the parasite now serves as an antigen. So in this pot you have what is called an antibodies. Normally serologically, when a corresponding antigen meets an corresponding antibody, you have a feasible reaction. So that when there is a positive test, that is why you see a band that shows here, showing that the test is positive. And this other band here is just a control band showing that the test was rightly done. The second strip here is just similar to the first test, but this strip here, you see multiple bands showing that the person which this test was done from had multiple infections from malaria. Because malaria, we have like 4 different species of malaria. You have the Plasmodium ovale, the malariae, the vivax, and the Plasmodium falciparum. So that if you are positive with 2 or more of this parasite, normally you have more than 2 bands. This is another slide, like when we do the thin and the thin film, as I said in our previous slide, is when it is being stained, it is being viewed under the microscope. And under the microscope, this is what you're going to see. Like the ferrican body that you see, the pink ferrican body that you see, these are your red blood cells. Since the malaria parasite lives on our red blood cells, this pink, when you look at it, this is kind of like darkish, bluish structures. These are your malaria parasites. So when you are infected, when they go through that process, doing a staining, and it's being mounted under the microscope, this is what will be seen. And it takes a special trained technician to do this. This slide over here, these are just the various stages of malaria. As I earlier stated, malaria, you have like 4 different species of malaria. Because the first one is like, these are the ring forms of Plasmodium falciparum. Like down here, these are the merozoite forms. These are the ring forms of Plasmodium vivax. How is this disease being treated? This disease is being treated. They use what is called the ACT based combined therapy, also known as artemisinin based combined therapy. Because there are so many species of malaria, they use what is a cocktail kind of treatment where they use more than 2 different kinds of drug, because you can be infected with more than one species of malaria, but when they use just one kind of drug to treat you, you still remain infected. So they have come out with what is called a combined based therapy where they use more than 2 different kinds of drug to treat infected cases, and it's very, very efficient. How is this disease being prevented? This disease is being prevented. They use a mosquito net, and what happened is they use long-lasting insecticides where they spray this mosquito net, and kids or adults can sleep under this mosquito net. As you can see in the picture here, this is a mosquito net, and you can see people sleeping under the mosquito net. This mosquito net serves as a barrier from the mosquito from reaching the children. They use also the insecticide as they spray the mosquito net, and they also use the insecticide also to spray probably the rooms and breeding grounds of these mosquitoes that causes malaria, because these mosquitoes that causes malaria breed in stagnant water, so they spray the surfaces of stagnant water and thereby killing these mosquitoes. Vaccine is another way that can be used to prevent this disease. But unfortunately, as of now, there is no vaccine for malaria. Science and other organizations around the world are working extremely hard to develop a malaria vaccine and to ensure availability in developing countries. In every second, 60 minutes, a child dies of malaria. And every 60 minutes, if a child dies of malaria, in an hour, if you can work out the math to see how many children died of malaria, you see that it is a lot. And so Africa remains highly endemic area. That is why malaria kills a lot of people in Africa. Thank you.